Chapter 1. The iron gates of Holomay Sanctuary slammed shut with a finality that echoed through Sera's bones. She stood on the wrong side of those gates for the first time in 19 years, clutching a leather satchel that contained everything the sisters had allowed her to keep: 2 rough-spun shifts, a silver pendant shaped like a crescent moon, the only item found with her as an infant, and 4 tarnished coins that wouldn't buy passage to anywhere that mattered. 19 years within those grey walls. 19 years of sleeping on straw pallets, memorizing healing herbs she'd never be allowed to use outside these grounds, and listening to Sister Margot's warnings about the world beyond. "You're too old now," the sister had said that morning, her voice carrying no warmth, no regret. "The younger ones need your bed. We've taught you letters and numbers. The rest is your burden to carry." "My burden." Sera stared at the narrow road winding away from the sanctuary, disappearing into the thorned wilderness that surrounded the township of Ashmark. "What road? I don't even know which direction leads to food." She had no family name. No parents who'd ever claimed her. No place in this world except the one she'd make with 4 coins and knowledge of herbs that most folks called witchcraft when spoken outside sanctuary walls. Sera took 1 step forward, then another. There was no way to go but away. The township was small, a collection of timber and thatch buildings slumped together like exhausted travelers. Muddy paths carved between them, and the people moved with heads down, focused only on surviving until tomorrow. Sera walked until her feet ached, until hunger became a living thing gnawing at her stomach. She found a stone fountain at the township's edge and collapsed beside it. Her fingers trembled as she pulled 1 coin from her satchel. 4 coins. Maybe 3 days of bread if I'm careful. That's when the voices drifted over. "They are hiring at Thornhaven Keep, you know." An older woman was speaking to a younger one as they filled water buckets. "My sister sent word from the capital. The Prince-Regent is expanding his household staff. Cooks, laundresses, chambermaids. They pay in silver." The younger woman snorted. "Silver? And who's fool enough to work in a cursed keep? Everyone knows what happened there. The scarred prince who can't show his face. The screams that echo from the East Tower every new moon. People go in and some don't come out. Cursed or not, silver spends the same," the older woman muttered. "And they say he keeps to himself anyway, locked in his chambers for reasons nobody talks about. The staff who work there are common folk. Human, like us." Sera remained perfectly still, every word carving itself into her mind. Keep. Work. Silver. She knew almost nothing about the cursed nobility. Only fragments from travelers who'd stopped at the sanctuary seeking healing. Stories of a princely line touched by dark magic generations ago, of a family that ruled from Thornhaven Keep in the Northern Territories, of the current Prince-Regent named Daemon Ashencroft who wore a mask and never attended court. The stories painted him as dangerous, violent, wrong somehow. But Sera looked at the 4 coins in her palm and thought, what choice do I have? She stood, approaching the 2 women. "Forgive the interruption." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Do you know where I might apply for work at Thornhaven Keep?" Both women turned, their expressions shifting from surprise to pity as they took in her sanctuary clothes, her empty hands, her obvious desperation. "You're serious, girl." The older woman's brow furrowed. "You look like you've got nowhere else to go." Sera lifted her chin. "I don't. That's why I need work. Any work." The women exchanged glances. Finally, the older one sighed. "If you're determined, go to the Blackstone Inn in the village of Morwatch, half a day's walk north on the high road. They say the keep's steward, Master Corwin Thorne, will be there tomorrow at first light, interviewing candidates. But mark me, girl, Thornhaven isn't a place for those with weak constitutions. Strange things happen there." Sera nodded, gripping her satchel strap. "Thank you." Sera arrived at the Blackstone Inn before dawn broke fully across the sky. There were others waiting, maybe 15 women total, all wearing expressions that ranged from desperate hope to poorly hidden terror. No one spoke much. They simply waited. When the door opened and a tall, severe figure entered, the room fell silent. Master Corwin Thorne was exactly the kind of man who commanded attention without raising his voice. Tall, lean, with iron-grey hair pulled back severely and eyes like chips of flint. He wore black robes that marked him as keep official, and when he spoke, his voice cut through the space like a blade. "Good morning. I am Master Corwin Thorne, steward of Thornhaven Keep. I'm here to select competent servants for kitchen and cleaning duties. If chosen, you'll receive quarters, meals, and payment in silver. Any misconduct, theft, or idle gossip will result in immediate dismissal. Is that understood? Everyone nodded. Master Thorn walked among them, examining each woman with clinical precision. Some he dismissed with a single glance. Others received a curt nod. When he reached Sera, her stomach clenched. Name? Sera, sir. Surname? Heat crept up her neck. I don't have one, sir. I was raised at Holomay Sanctuary. His eyebrow lifted fractionally, but he made no comment. Age? 19 years. Experience? I worked in the sanctuary infirmary from age 10. I can prepare medicines, treat wounds, cook, clean, and I learn quickly. Can you read? Yes, sir. Sister Margot taught us letters and basic texts. Master Thorn studied her for a long moment, and Sera felt dissected by that cold gaze. You look too frail to carry supply crates. I'm stronger than I appear, sir, Sera replied, keeping her voice level. Something almost like approval flickered in his expression. Very well. You're hired. Present yourself at the keep gates tomorrow at dawn. Bring only essentials. Everything else will be provided. Sera reached Thornhaven Keep as pale light touched the horizon. The structure loomed before her, far larger than anything she'd ever seen. Grey stone towers clawed at the sky. High walls enclosed the grounds, and dark pennants bearing a broken crown sigil snapped in the cold wind. Guards patrolled the ramparts, their presence heavy even from a distance. She wasn't alone. 6 other women waited at the gates, all looking equally lost. A guard led them through the entrance, across cobblestone courtyards and through torchlit corridors until they reached a side wing where servants' quarters were housed. You'll sleep here. The guard indicated a long dormitory with narrow cots. Meals are served in the kitchen at dawn and dusk. You don't leave your assigned areas without permission. You don't speak to the household guard unless addressed. And most importantly, he paused, his expression hardening, you stay away from the East Wing. The Prince-Regent values his privacy. Anyone found wandering those corridors will be dismissed. No exceptions. Sera swallowed. She hadn't seen him yet. Didn't know if she ever would. But knowing he was somewhere in this vast keep made something strange twist in her chest. The first days were brutal. Sera scrubbed floors until her knees were bruised and bleeding. She hauled water buckets that felt like they weighed as much as she did. She peeled vegetables until her fingers cramped, washed linens until her hands were raw. She worked from before sunrise until long after dark, and when she finally collapsed onto her cot, sleep claimed her like the dead. Weeks passed. Sera learned the rhythms of Thornhaven Keep, but she also began to notice things. Sometimes, while working near the kitchen windows that overlooked the inner gardens, she saw guards carrying strange bundles, not supplies, but cloth-wrapped packages that smelled of rare herbs. Not the common rosemary and thyme the kitchen used, but unusual plants. Once, she glimpsed bloodroot and silverleaf, herbs Sister Margot had taught were used only in the most potent healing rituals. She heard whispers, too. It's for the prince. One older maid muttered to another while Sera pretended to focus on scrubbing a pot. They've tried everything. Healers from the south, mags from across the sea, even a witch from the Shadowlands. Nothing works. The curse is ancient, the other replied. They say only. Then she noticed Sera nearby and fell silent. Sera didn't ask. Servants who asked too many questions didn't last. And during all those weeks, she never saw the Prince-Regent. It was as if he were a ghost haunting his own keep. The maids whispered about it when they thought no one listened. They said Prince Daemon spent days locked in the East Wing, that he never came down for meals, that only Master Thorn and the most trusted guards were allowed near him. 2 months had passed since Sera arrived at Thornhaven Keep. But tonight was different. Tonight was the new moon. Sera overheard urgent conversations among the guards during the evening meal. They spoke in low voices, but she caught fragments. The chains are reinforced this time. May the old gods grant mercy. Clear the east corridors. No one goes up there tonight. She didn't understand, but something in their tone left ice in her veins. That night, Sera worked later than usual. The kitchen had prepared a formal supper for visiting dignitaries. Even though the prince wouldn't attend, tradition demanded it, and she stayed behind to help clean the chaos left behind. By the time she finished, it was well past midnight. The keep lay submerged in silence. She walked down the corridor toward the servants' quarters, every muscle aching, exhaustion pulling at her eyes. Then she heard it. A sound, not quite human, not quite animal. A cry of agony that made every hair on her body stand straight. Sera stopped mid-stride, her heart hammering. The sound came from above, from the east wing where the prince's chambers were located. It was followed by a crash, as if something heavy had been thrown against stone. She should turn back. She'd run to her cot and pretend she'd heard nothing. But there was something in that sound, something that hooked into her chest like a barbed wire pulling tight. An inexplicable compulsion to go, to help, to do something. Someone is in pain. Sera didn't think. She simply moved. Chapter 2. Sera climbed the stone stairs leading to the east wing, following the sounds of anguish echoing through empty corridors. The guards who normally patrolled were absent. Later, she would understand this was intentional. Every new moon, the trusted guards cleared the east wing, leaving only Master Thorn and 2 men sworn to secrecy to ensure the prince didn't escape and harm the innocent. The closer she climbed, the heavier the air became. Something pulled her forward, an inexplicable magnetism she couldn't name or resist. She reached a long corridor lit only by flickering torches mounted on stone walls. At the far end stood a pair of carved doors, tightly shut, and from behind them came the sounds that had drawn her here. Sera approached slowly, her heart a drum against her ribs. When she was only meters from the door, she heard a sound so raw, so filled with torment, that her blood turned to ice. Terror crashed over her like a wave, and she froze completely, her feet refusing to move. Inside the chamber, Daemon stopped mid-convulsion. He drew air through his nose violently, his head snapping toward the door. That scent: silver moonflower, winter berries, consecrated sage, healer's essence. Impossible. With a guttural roar, he shattered the reinforced chains binding his wrists. The metallic crash echoed through the chamber. Sera heard it and the sound of something massive moving fast. Then, silence. She was breathing hard, still paralyzed with fear, when she heard a soft click to her left. A hidden panel in the wall slid open, and he was there, directly in front of her. Sera let out a strangled cry, instinctively stepping back. Daemon Ashencroft was immense, taller and broader than any man she'd ever encountered. Black hair hung in sweat-soaked strands across his face. His chest was bare, revealing a landscape of scars that looked like claw marks, burn patterns, surgical cuts, a history of pain carved into flesh. But what froze her in true terror was his condition. He was caught between states. His right hand was fully human. His left bore curved talons that gleamed like obsidian, appearing and disappearing as if his body couldn't decide what form to hold. His skin rippled, something beneath it struggling to emerge. One eye was storm gray and human. The other glowed with an unnatural violet light, the pupil elongated like a predator's. The transformation wouldn't complete, and the agony was written in every line of his face. He took a lurching step forward, then stopped. He scented the air again, his head tilting. His eyes, both the human gray and the violet, widened in absolute shock. Sera seized the moment and ran. She spun and bolted down the corridor, panic flooding every vein. But Daemon was faster. In 3 strides, he caught her. A large hand, the human one, closed around her wrist, not with violence, but with unbreakable firmness. Before she could scream, he lifted her effortlessly and carried her back. No. His voice came out rough, fractured between human speech and something else. Don't run. He carried her through the hidden door, down a short passage that led directly into his chamber, a room completely destroyed. Furniture overturned, curtains shredded, broken glass scattered across stone floors. He set her on her feet near an enormous bed but didn't release her wrist. One hand still held her as if afraid she might vanish like smoke. His eyes, the mismatched pair, studied her with a mixture of shock, desperation, and something that looked almost like worship. "Who are you?" Daemon asked, his voice breaking on the words. He stepped closer, erasing the distance between them. Sera felt the urge to retreat again, but something in those eyes, not just the inhuman violet glow, but the human gray filled with loneliness and silent pleading, kept her rooted. When he slowly raised his hand, the one with talons still partially extended, she simply held her breath and waited. Sera didn't move. She stood there, pulse visible in her throat, as his fingers touched her face. The touch was surprisingly gentle despite the talons. His fingers traced her jawline, lifting to brush a strand of dark hair away from her eyes. And then it happened. The thing inside him, whatever fought to emerge, fell silent. The transformation tearing Daemon apart stopped. The talons fully retracted, becoming human fingers. His violet eye faded back to storm gray. His ragged, agonized breathing calmed. The muscles that had writhed beneath his skin relaxed. He stood completely still, eyes wide with disbelief, as if unable to comprehend what was happening. You. Daemon's voice cracked. You stopped it. For the first time in 10 years, you stopped it. Sera didn't understand, but Daemon didn't explain with words. He simply pulled her against him with a sudden movement, wrapping her in an embrace so tight she could barely draw breath. He buried his face in her hair, inhaling deeply, and Sera felt his entire body finally relax. You're real, he whispered against her hair. Please tell me you're real. Sera didn't know what to say, didn't know what to do. Don't leave, he said, his voice low, almost a plea. Just, don't leave. I need to understand. I need to know if this is real or if I'm finally losing what's left of my sanity. Sera didn't understand any of it, but she said the only thing she could in that moment. I won't leave. Daemon sat on the edge of his bed, still holding her hand as if it were a lifeline tethering him to reality. Tell me your name. Sera. Sera, he repeated, tasting each syllable. Just Sera. I grew up in a sanctuary. I don't have a family name. Something crossed his face. Understanding, perhaps. Empathy. I know what it's like to feel alone, he said quietly. My father died when I was 12. My mother, she couldn't bear to look at me after the curse manifested. When I was 14, she left for the southern estates and never returned. The curse, Sera repeated gently. What is it? Daemon was silent for a long moment, his jaw tightening. She saw the battle behind his eyes, the struggle between revealing and hiding, between trust and self-preservation. Finally, he sighed. When I was born, a sorceress named Mora Blackthorn placed a curse on me, he said, each word controlled yet edged with pain. My grandfather had executed her son years before, accused of using forbidden magic against the realm. She swore vengeance. On the day of my birth, she entered the keep and cast the curse before the entire court. He paused, his eyes distant with memory. Every new moon, the curse activates. I lose control of my form. I can't fully transform into whatever I'm supposed to become. I can't remain human either. I'm trapped between states, torn apart from the inside. The pain is, he closed his eyes. Like every bone in my body is being shattered and reformed, over and over, without end. Sera felt her chest constrict. And tonight is the new moon. Yes, that's why I was chained. My most loyal guards restrain me before the transformation can take hold. Because if they don't, Daemon opened his eyes, and there was something dark there. I could kill someone, destroy everything around me. The curse turns me into something I can't control. Sera squeezed his hand. Did the sorceress say how to break it? Daemon nodded slowly. She said only the touch of my fated one could calm the transformation, and that if I didn't find them before I turned 25. His voice faltered. The curse would consume me completely. I'd lose myself forever. 1 year, Sera thought in horror. He has only 1 year left. But you calmed it, Daemon continued, turning fully to face her. For the first time since this began, the transformation stopped. The pain vanished. And the healers I consulted over the years said the fated one alone wouldn't be enough. They would need healing magic in their blood. Ancient essence. He touched her face again, reverently. And you have it. I can smell it on you. Silver moonflower, winter berries, sage, the signature of healer's magic. I don't know how to use magic, Sera whispered. I don't know what I am. You don't need to know, Daemon said. You only need to be. And you are. You're my salvation. When he leaned in, Sera didn't pull away. And when his lips touched hers, soft, questioning, as if asking permission, she answered. The kiss began gently, almost hesitant, but quickly deepened. There was something desperate in it, as if both had been waiting a lifetime for this without knowing. Daemon's hands rose to frame her face, fingers threading into her dark hair, and Sera found herself pressing closer, wanting more, needing more. When they finally parted, both were breathless. I don't understand what you're doing to me, Daemon murmured, his forehead resting against hers. But I don't want it to stop. Then I won't stop, Sera replied, surprising herself with her boldness. His eyes, both fully grey now, fully human, blazed with intensity. Do you know what you're saying? I know you're suffering, Sera said softly. I know you're alone. And I know that when I'm near you, something inside me recognizes something inside you, as if we've been searching for each other without realizing. That's what you are, Daemon whispered. My fated one. My match. And then he kissed her again, and this time there was no hesitation. His hands found the ties of her simple dress, undoing them with fingers that trembled slightly, not just with desire, but with something deeper. Reverence, gratitude, relief. When the dress slipped away, revealing her skin, Daemon stopped. He only looked, his grey eyes tracing every curve as if committing something sacred to memory. Yo! He didn't finish. He only leaned in, pressing his lips to the hollow of her throat, down her collarbone, leaving a trail of kisses that ignited every nerve. Sera arched, her fingers burying themselves in his black hair as sensations she'd never experienced swept through her body. When his hands explored her skin, firm yet gentle, she gasped. Daemon laid her down on the bed with care, as if she was something precious that might shatter. And when he finally positioned himself above her, his eyes met hers once more. Are you certain? His voice was rough, but there was control in it. One final chance to retreat. Because if we do this, there's no going back. You'll be mine, and I'll be yours. Sera pulled him down, answering with a kiss that left no doubt. I already am yours, she whispered against his lips. And then he took her, slowly, with a gentleness that contrasted with the raw power she knew he possessed. Sera closed her eyes, her entire body vibrating with overwhelming new sensations. Look at me, Daemon murmured. And when she opened her eyes, she found him watching her with an intensity that stole her breath. And then he moved. Pleasure built slowly, like rising waves. Every movement synchronized, every touch precise. Daemon kissed her as if memoizing her taste, his hands exploring every inch of exposed skin. Sera responded with equal intensity, her fingers tracing the landscape of scars on his chest, feeling the restrained strength there. When the climax finally came, it was as if the entire world shattered and reformed. They remained like that for a long moment, breaths uneven, hearts beating in unison. When Daemon finally withdrew, it was only to pull her against his chest, his arms wrapping around her as if afraid she might disappear. Sera rested her head against his shoulder, still trying to catch her breath, still feeling echoes of pleasure vibrating through her. Sleep, he murmured into her hair. I won't let anything harm you. Ever. And for the first time in her life, Sera fell asleep feeling completely safe. Chapter 3. Sera woke as the first pale light of dawn began filtering through gaps in the heavy curtains. For a moment, she lay completely still, trying to understand where she was. The mattress beneath her was far too soft, the sheets far too fine, the silence around her far too heavy. None of it felt real. Then she turned her head and saw him. Daemon Ashencroft was sleeping beside her. The Prince-Regent, the most feared man in the Northern Territories, the one she'd seen torn apart by the curse only hours before, was now at peace. His face was relaxed, his breathing deep and steady, the muscles that had writhed in agony completely loose. Black hair spread across the pillow like ink spilled on snow. There was something almost vulnerable in the way he slept, as if for the first time in a decade he'd allowed all his defenses to fall away. And she was there, lying beside him in the prince's chambers. Reality crashed down on Sera like cold water. I'm just a servant. The truth hammered into her mind, each word a crushing weight. He's the Prince-Regent. Sera sat up slowly, trying not to make a sound, her heart racing. She looked around the destroyed chamber, overturned furniture, torn curtains, shards of glass scattered across the floor, reminders of last night's violence. But it all seemed distant now, unreal, as if it had happened in another world. I shouldn't be here. The thought came with absolute clarity, sharp and cutting. What have I done? Sera pressed a hand over her mouth, stifling the sound that threatened to escape. She'd spent the night in the prince's arms. She'd let him touch her. She'd allowed herself to believe, even if only for a few hours, that she could be something more than what she was. But morning light didn't lie. She was a nameless servant, a sanctuary orphan with nothing. Even if he said I have healer's magic, Sera thought, touching the silver crescent pendant lying on the small table beside the bed. Even if I'm his fated one, I'm still nobody. Just Sera. She picked up the pendant gently, running her fingers over the engraved surface. Sister Margot had said only once, years ago when Sera had asked, "This symbol was with you when you arrived. Perhaps it belonged to your mother. Perhaps it means something. I don't know, child. A crescent moon. I don't even know what it represents. I need to leave." The urgency hit her like a violent wave. If anyone found her here, if the servants spread rumors, she would be destroyed, Cast out, possibly worse. With trembling hands, Sera slid out of bed, searching for her clothes. She found her simple dress crumpled on the floor and dressed in absolute silence, every movement carefully measured to avoid making a sound. Daemon didn't stir. He continued sleeping, finally at peace. Sera looked at him one last time, memorizing every detail because she knew she would never have this chance again. The black hair spread across the pillow, the strong line of his jaw, the scars marking his skin like a map of suffering. Forgive me, she thought, not knowing exactly what she was asking forgiveness for not being enough, for running, for believing, even briefly, that this could be real. Her heart shattered into pieces she didn't know how to gather. Sera crossed the chamber toward the door. She opened it slowly, inch by inch, praying the hinges wouldn't creak, and froze. Master Corwin Thorne stood in the corridor. The steward was there, arms crossed over his chest, his body completely blocking the passage, and the expression on his face made Sera's blood run cold. For a long, endless moment, neither of them spoke. They only stared at each other, Sera with guilt written into every line of her body, Corwin with controlled fury radiating like visible heat. Then Corwin stepped forward, his voice low and venomous, every word carefully measured so as not to wake the man sleeping inside. You have made a grave mistake. Sera opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Corwin moved closer, and now Sera could see the details, the tension in his jaw, the way his fingers dug into his own arms as if holding himself back from something violent. Lying with the prince, the words lashed like whips. A nameless servant without family, without any value whatsoever. Each accusation was a knife. Do you think you have any worth here? Corwin continued, his voice rising slightly before he forced it down again. Do you think this means anything? That he cares? I didn't, Sera began, her voice weak, broken. Listen carefully to what I'm about to tell you. Corwin leaned slightly closer, his eyes boring into Sera's. You are nothing. Less than nothing. And if you think the prince would choose you, an ordinary orphan, over someone of proper lineage, then you're even more foolish than I thought. The words hurt more than Sera expected, because they were true. They were exactly what she herself believed. Gather your things and leave, Corwin ordered, his voice now heavy with absolute authority. Now, before I turn you over to the guards for trespassing in the prince's chambers. Sera felt the ground vanish beneath her feet. Go, Corwin said again, pointing down the corridor. Before I change my mind and summon the guards right now. Sera had no choice. With her face wet with tears, she turned and ran. She ran through stone corridors, down spiral staircases, across empty halls lit only by the faint light of dawn. She took nothing with her. She didn't return to the servants' quarters to collect her few possessions. She only ran, her heart pounding, her lungs burning, the pain in her chest so sharp she could barely breathe. She passed guards patrolling the gates. They looked at her with surprise but didn't stop her. After all, she was only a servant. No one important. And then she was outside. Sera ran down the dirt road leading away from Thornhaven Keep, not knowing where she was going, only knowing she needed distance. She needed to disappear before the pain tore her apart completely. It was only when she finally stopped, lungs burning, legs shaking, miles away from the keep, that she realized. The pendant. The silver crescent moon pendant. The only thing she had from her past. The only piece of a history she'd never known. It was in the chamber. She'd left it behind. Sera collapsed to her knees in the middle of the road, sobbing, her hands pressed to her chest as if she could hold together the pieces of her breaking heart. I lost everything. And there, alone on the deserted road beneath a sky beginning to brighten, Sera cried until she had no tears left. Daemon woke alone. The first thing he registered was the cold, the absence of warmth where a body should have been. He opened his eyes immediately, every instinct flaring, and turned his head. The bed was empty. For a second, he thought perhaps she was still in the chamber, dressing perhaps, or standing by the window. But the silence was absolute. And her scent, that scent of silver moonflower and winterberries his curse-touched senses had recognized instantly, the scent of healer's magic running through her veins, was fading. Sera. No answer. Daemon rose quickly, sweeping the chamber with his gaze. Empty. Completely empty. Panic began to rise in his throat. He crossed the chamber in 3 strides, flung the door open, and found the corridor equally empty. No guards, no servants, and no sign of her. Sera! His voice echoed through the corridors, but there was no response. She's gone. She left me. The thing inside him roared, a surge of desperation and fury crashing through his body with such force it nearly brought him to his knees. He felt talons threatening to emerge, his eyes burning with unnatural light, the transformation pulling beneath his skin. But then he forced himself to breathe, to control it. She has healer's magic, he reminded himself. She calmed the curse. For the first time, I found peace. And now she's gone. Daemon went back into the chamber. That was when he saw it. A piece of silver on the floor near the bed. Daemon knelt and picked it up. It was a pendant, delicate, old, with a crescent moon engraved on its surface. He pressed the pendant to his face and inhaled. Her scent exploded through his senses. Soft, human, with a hint of lavender she must have used in her hair. And beneath it, unmistakable now that he knew what to seek, was the scent of healing magic, silver moonflower, winterberries, consecrated sage, the herbs ancient healers carried in their blood even without knowing it. Daemon rose, still clutching the pendant, and an iron determination settled in his chest. She is mine, and I will find her. Daemon summoned Master Thorn at once. The steward arrived within minutes. Your Highness. She's gone, Daemon said without preamble. The servant who was in my chambers last night. Sera. She fled. Fled. Corwin's expression remained carefully neutral. Someone was here last night. Daemon cut him off. I need to find her. Now. Your Highness, with all due respect, we have responsibilities here. The court. To hell with the court, Daemon hissed, his eyes glowing with violet light. She is my fated one, the only person capable of calming the curse, and I will not let her go. The servant. Corwin repeated, his tone carefully controlled. Your Highness, are you certain that? Absolutely certain, Daemon roared. She calmed the transformation last night. For the first time in 10 years, I spent a new moon without being torn apart. And I discovered why. She has ancestral healer's magic. My curse recognized her. She is my fated one, and I need to find her. Corwin fell silent for a long moment, studying the prince. Then he nodded slowly. I understand. What do you need from me? Search the keep. Question every servant. Find out who saw her last, where she went, what happened. Someone knows something. What does she look like? Corwin asked pragmatically. Daemon hesitated, realizing he barely knew how to describe her in words that did her justice. Dark hair, brown eyes. Small, thin. He paused, gripping the pendant more tightly. She's the kind of person who goes unnoticed, that no one pays attention to. But when she's close, his voice softened. When she's close, it's impossible not to feel her. Corwin nodded, now understanding the urgency. If the girl was so ordinary, so invisible, finding her would be like searching for a single grain of sand on a beach. I'll begin immediately, he said. But Your Highness, if she fled, it's because she was afraid. And frightened servants tend to disappear very well. That's why I'll go after her myself, Daemon said. But I need to know where to begin. I need to understand what made her run. Yes, Your Highness. Corwin left swiftly, and Daemon remained alone in the destroyed chamber, holding the engraved pendant as if it were the most precious thing in the world. It took 2 hours for Corwin to return with information. During that time, he discreetly questioned dozens of servants. Most didn't even know who Sera was, a girl so ordinary, so invisible, that despite working at the keep for 2 months, few remembered her name. Some recognized her when described, but only as that girl from the infirmary, or the one who always keeps her head down. But eventually, he found clues. The guards at the gates saw her leave at dawn, Corwin reported when he returned to the prince's chambers. They said a young woman ran past them crying. Dark hair, simple dress. She carried nothing. She just fled. Daemon felt his jaw tighten. And no one stopped her. She's only a servant, Your Highness. The guards had no reason to prevent her from leaving. Anything else? Daemon asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Corwin hesitated. Your Highness, I must confess something. Daemon's eyes narrowed. What? I encountered the girl this morning, in the corridor outside your chambers. Corwin's expression remained controlled, but something flickered in his eyes. I told her to leave. I believed I was protecting your reputation, Your Highness. I didn't know she was your fated one. I thought. You expelled her, Daemon said. It was not a question. It was absolute certainty. Yes, Your Highness. and I take full responsibility for my error in judgment. The fury Daemon felt was so intense his curse nearly broke to the surface. Only brutal force of will kept the transformation contained. You will remain as steward, Daemon said, his voice dangerously low, because I need someone competent to manage the keep while I'm gone. But mark this, Corwin, you will spend the rest of your service making amends for what you've done. Yes, Your Highness. I understand. Where would she go? Daemon asked. A girl with nothing, no family, no connections. Corwin considered. She came from Holomay Sanctuary. She might return there. Or she might seek work elsewhere, perhaps in one of the smaller townships where questions aren't asked. Daemon nodded. Then that's where I'll search. Chapter 4. Sera arrived in the township of Raven Hollow when the sun was already high in the sky. The small settlement sat on the borders of the Northern Territories, hidden among misted hills and dense forests that seemed to swallow light. The tavern was at the center of the township, a weathered building called the Broken Stag. Sera pushed the door open and stepped inside. The interior was dark, damp, and smelled of stale ale and wood smoke. A few tables were occupied by men drinking in silence, and a middle-aged woman cleaned mugs behind the counter with a weary expression. The woman lifted her eyes when Sera approached. Lost. Looking for work, Sera replied, forcing steadiness into her voice. I can clean, cook, serve. I learn quickly. The woman studied her for a long moment, her eyes taking in the wrinkled dress, the disheveled hair, the empty hands. Running from someone. Sera hesitated. Lying would be useless. The truth was written in every line of her body. Yes. The woman nodded as if she'd expected that answer. I don't care about your past as long as you work properly. My name is Marta. I own this place. I can offer food, a cot in the back, and a few copper coins a week. Interested. Relief flooded Sera's chest. Yes. Very much. Good. Start now. Marta gestured toward the tables. Those men have been waiting far too long. And so, without any more ceremony, Sera began to work. The days dragged on in a routine that was both numbing and painful. That night, as she served ale to a group of travelers who had stopped in the township, Sera began to catch fragments of conversation that made her attention snap sharp. They say the Prince-Regent abandoned Thornhaven Keep, one of the men said, his voice thick with drink. Vanished. Left the keep days ago. Sera nearly dropped the mug in her hand. Nonsense, another replied. Princes don't just disappear. But this one did. My brother who works in the stables told me. Said the prince left alone, gave instructions to the steward, and no one knows where he went. The court is in chaos. He left. Why? Maybe he's hunting, a third man suggested. Cursed nobles need, whatever cursed nobles need. Sera stepped away from the table before they could notice she was listening. She went to the back of the tavern, pressed her spine against the cold wall, and tried to control her uneven breathing. He left the keep. His searching. But searching for what? In the weeks that followed, Sera began paying closer attention to travelers' conversations, and that was how she started to learn about the cursed bloodlines. She heard about noble families touched by dark magic, about hierarchies within cursed houses, about how power determined status. She heard about fated ones, the rare, almost mythic connections where two beings recognized each other so deeply they became essentially one. They said that when a cursed noble found their fated one, the whole world could collapse around them and they would protect that person always, no matter the cost. But for Sera, raised between the cold walls of a sanctuary where love was a rare word and magic was barely whispered, all of it felt impossible to believe. Cursed transformations, sorceresses casting spells, predestined soul bonds. It was a whirlwind of information that her mind, accustomed only to the hard, simple reality of survival, struggled to process. How could it be real? How could a love like that exist? Instant, overwhelming, inevitable. Is that what I am to him? Sera would wonder late at night. A true fated one. That foggy morning, Sera was wiping down tables when the tavern door opened. She didn't look up. She simply kept working, already used to the constant flow of travelers. But then she felt it. Something shifted in the air. It grew heavier, charged, as if a storm were about to break inside that small space. Sera lifted her eyes slowly and froze. Daemon Ashencroft stood in the doorway. He wore simple traveler's clothes, a dark cloak, worn trousers, a hood thrown back revealing disheveled black hair. Stubble shadowed his jaw, deep hollows sat beneath his storm-gray eyes, and road dust streaked his skin. He looked exhausted, but his eyes, those intense grey eyes, burned with something so ferocious it stole the air from her lungs. Daemon saw her, and the entire world stopped. For one endless moment, neither of them moved. They simply stared across the space between them, she with the cleaning cloth still in her hands, he with the door still hanging open behind him. Then Daemon crossed the tavern. He didn't run. He didn't need to. Each step was measured, deliberate, and everyone in the tavern instinctively moved aside, feeling the power rolling off him even without a crown, even without armor. He stopped in front of her. So close, Sera could feel the heat radiating from him, could see every detail, the fatigue lines on his face, the tension in his jaw, the way his hands opened and closed at his sides as if he were fighting the urge to touch her. "You," he rasped, his voice rough, broken. "You are my fated one." The silence that followed was absolute. Everyone in the tavern went still, watching, waiting. Sera felt tears sting her eyes. "Daemon, No." He cut her off, taking one more step, erasing the last inch of space between them. "Don't run from me again. Don't leave me again." "But the court," Sera began. Master Thorn said. "Corwin was wrong," Daemon said, and there was cold satisfaction in those words. "He overstepped his authority. He had no right to drive you away. He serves at my pleasure, and he knows he made a grave mistake." Sera blinked, startled. "I ran because I thought I wasn't enough. That you would eventually realize you deserved someone better, someone of proper lineage. That you only wanted me because you need me to survive the curse." "I need you," Daemon admitted, and there was brutal honesty in the words. "Yes, I need you to calm the transformation, to break the curse, to survive the next year. But that isn't all I feel. Not even close." He rested his forehead against hers. "I've spent 10 years searching for my fated one. 10 years believing it would be only need, only survival. But then I found you." His voice softened. "And I learned that fated bonds aren't just compatibility. They are recognition. They are looking at someone and thinking, 'Oh, so it's you. Finally, it's you.'" "Daemon," Sera whispered. "You are the only one who matters," Daemon said, and there was so much conviction in those words that Sera felt something break inside her. Then, right there in the middle of the tavern, in front of everyone, Daemon Ashencroft dropped to one knee. The Prince-Regent, the most powerful man in the Northern Territories, kneeling before a sanctuary servant. "Come back with me," he said, his voice low but clear. "Please come back with me and be my consort. Be my fated one. Be mine." Sera looked at him, at the man who had crossed half the territories to find her, who had abandoned his keep to search for her, who was now kneeling at her feet asking for something she didn't even know she was allowed to give. And she realized there was no choice. There never had been, because she was already his from that first night, from the first touch. "Yes." The word came out as a whisper, but it carried through the silence of the tavern. Daemon closed his eyes, and the relief that crossed his expression was so intense it made Sera's chest tighten. He rose in one fluid motion, pulled her into his arms, and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, as if he'd been waiting an eternity for it. When they finally parted, both of them breathing hard, Daemon rested his forehead against hers. "Never run from me again," he murmured. "Promise." "I promise," Sera whispered back. "But Daemon, what if the court still?" "The court will learn to accept it," he cut in. "You calmed the curse. You saved me. And more than that, you are my fated one. They have no choice but to accept you." Sera nodded, trusting him in a way she had never trusted anyone. "Daemon," she said softly, "I'm sorry for running, for leaving you searching for weeks." He kissed her forehead. "You're here now. That's all that matters." And as Daemon held her as if he would never let her go again, she finally allowed herself to believe. Daemon and Sera were about to leave Raven Hollow when the tavern doors burst open. The sound of heavy boots against the wooden floor made everyone freeze. Sera, who had been gathering her few things while Daemon settled payment with Marta, turned instinctively and felt her blood run cold. A man stepped in, tall, powerfully built, with copper-red hair tied back severely and ice-blue eyes that looked capable of cutting through steel. He wore reinforced leather armor with plates of blackened steel, and there was something predatory in the way he moved, as if each step were calculated to intimidate. Behind him, more men filed in, 12, 15, all armed, all with the posture of warriors who had seen many battles. Daemon turned slowly, immediately positioning himself between Sera and the newcomers. And when he spoke, his voice came out low, dangerous. Gareth Ironwood. How interesting to find you so far from the eastern marches. The man, Gareth, smiled, but there was no warmth in it, only something calculated, cruel. Daemon Ashencroft. Or should I say, Prince-Regent. He dipped into a shallow bow, mocking. Though a prince who abandons his keep to chase after sanctuary servants hardly deserves the title, don't you think? Sera felt Daemon tense beside her, but he didn't answer the provocation. He only waited. Gareth walked slowly through the tavern, his men spreading out to block every exit. The few patrons who still remained hurried away, and even Marta disappeared into the back. You know, Gareth went on, picking up an abandoned mug and sniffing its contents with contempt. I've studied you for years, Daemon. Years watching, investigating, looking for the weakness every powerful man has. And you were particularly difficult to decipher. Get to the point, Gareth. The point. Gareth set the mug down and turned to face him directly. The point is, I found your secret. Moira Blackthorn's curse. Fascinating, really. Every new moon, your form turns against you. Must be uncomfortable. Sera watched Daemon's jaw tighten, his fists clench. How? Daemon asked quietly. Spies, Gareth answered simply. I have very loyal people in very interesting places. Lesser guards, servants, even a few merchants who frequent your keep. He smiled. I've been investigating you for years, Daemon. I knew about the curse, the patterns, the vulnerability. But one crucial piece was missing, how to use it against you. Gareth looked straight at Sera. And then I received a very interesting message from a certain steward who thought he was protecting your reputation. Master Thorn was extremely helpful in confirming certain details. About how you finally found your fated one, about the healer's magic, about how she ran. He tilted his head. It was only a matter of tracking where a frightened sanctuary girl would flee. And here we are. He stepped closer, those ice-blue eyes sliding to Sera, studying her with an interest that made her want to shrink. So, this is the famous girl. The human who miraculously calms the cursed Prince-Regent. Gareth tilted his head. I'll admit, I expected something more impressive. Daemon lunged forward, but Gareth lifted a hand. Careful. My men have very specific orders. If I give the signal, they take her. And something tells me you'd rather that didn't happen. If you touch her, Daemon began, his voice a growl. What will you do? Gareth let out a low laugh. Kill me here. Surrounded by my guards. Don't be foolish, Daemon. We both know that would end badly for both of us. That's why I came with an offer. I want nothing you have to offer. Not even her life. The silence that followed was absolute. Gareth smiled, knowing he had hit the mark. I thought that would get your attention. So listen carefully, because I'll say this only once. He folded his arms. For years I've wanted your position, your territories, your title of Prince-Regent. But I'm not stupid enough to start an open war. Too many lives lost, too many resources wasted. So I came to offer an alternative. What? A trial by combat. The words dropped like stones into the tavern's silence. Sera didn't fully understand what it meant, but she saw Gareth's guards straighten, saw the tension in the air sharpen until it was almost tangible. A trial by combat, Daemon repeated, his voice dangerously low. You know what you're asking. Perfectly, Gareth replied. Ancient tradition. Two nobles fight until one submits or dies. The winner takes all, territories, power, titles of the defeated. Simple, clean, final. And the girl? Daemon asked quietly. Where does she fit into this? Gareth smiled again, that cruel smile that made Sera's stomach twist. She's the guarantee. You see, I need to ensure you actually show up for the trial. So she comes with me as collateral. When the trial is over, if you survive, you can have her back. Never. Daemon's roar made the walls tremble. His eyes flared with violet light, talons beginning to emerge. She's not going anywhere with you. Gareth made a subtle gesture, and his guards advanced, boxing Daemon and Sera in from every side. You really want to do this here? Gareth asked, calm. Fight all of my best warriors, risk her getting hurt in the process? Or would you rather accept my offer, have a fair chance to defeat me, and bring her back safe and sound? Daemon went completely still, and Sera saw the war raging behind those eyes. The struggle between the instinct to protect her now and the cold logic that a fight here could kill her. Sera stepped forward, touching Daemon's arm. Don't do this, she whispered. Please, just fight him now. Don't let me go with. If I fight here, you could die, Daemon replied, his voice breaking. And that I cannot risk. He cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. Trust me. Please, just trust me. I will win. I will bring you back. I promise. Sera felt tears burn in her eyes, but she nodded. Daemon turned to Gareth, and when he spoke, every word carried pure hatred. I accept the trial. But if you touch her, if you do anything beyond keeping her safe, I swear by the old gods, there will not be a slow enough death for you. Gareth lifted his hands in a gesture of peace. She will not be touched. You have my word as a noble. Gareth gestured, and 2 of his guards moved towards Sera. Take her carefully. Sera tried to step back, but they were faster. They caught her arms, not brutally, but firmly enough to make it clear resistance was useless. Daemon, she screamed, struggling against their grip. Daemon moved instinctively, but a dozen swords were drawn at once, all pointed at him. Don't, Gareth warned, or she gets hurt, and I know you don't want that. Daemon stopped, trembling with restrained fury, his grey eyes never leaving Sera as she was dragged away from him. 3 days, Gareth said. On the neutral grounds between our territories, at sunset on the 3rd day. If you don't show, well, I suppose she becomes property of the Eastern Marches. I'll be there, Daemon roared. And when I am, I'll tear her from you and then rip you apart limb by limb. Gareth only smiled. I'm looking forward to watching you try. And then Sera was taken out of the tavern, her heart pounding, tears streaming down her face, while the last thing she saw was Daemon standing there, motionless, shattered, watching her disappear. Chapter 5. The journey to Gareth's fortress in the Eastern Marches took 2 days of hard riding, stopping only to rest the horses and eat quickly. Sera was kept under constant watch, always surrounded by guards, never left alone, always observed. Gareth rode at the front, never looking back, as if she were nothing more than cargo to be transported. On the first night, when they made camp in a clearing, Sera finally understood the extent of Gareth's planning. She caught fragments of conversation between the guards. The Lord has been planning this for months, one of them said. Ever since the spies confirmed the curse existed. The steward's message only accelerated the timeline. He already knew the prince would go looking for the girl. He just didn't know where she'd be. Months, Sera thought in horror. He had been preparing this for months. Master Thorn's message had simply delivered the final piece. On the 2nd day, Sera tried to talk to the guards, searching for any weakness, any chance to escape. But they were professionals, trained, disciplined, loyal to Gareth in ways she couldn't break. Don't waste your energy, one of them said, not unkindly. Lord Gareth didn't choose us because we're fools. And you, well, you're far too valuable to risk losing. Valuable as a hostage, Sera shot back bitterly. Valuable as leverage, the guard corrected. There's a difference. When they finally crossed the mountains and the fortress appeared on the horizon, Sera felt desperation tighten in her throat. The structure was immense, blackened stone walls rising against the grey sky, watchtowers like blades, iron gates that opened with a menacing groan. Sera was taken inside through cold, damp corridors until they reached a chamber in one of the towers. And then Sera was alone. Gareth visited her the next morning. He entered without knocking, carrying a tray of bread and water, which he set on the table as if he were a courteous host. Sleep well? He asked, his ice-blue eyes studying her. Sera didn't answer. She only stared at him with all the fury she could gather. Gareth sighed and sat down in the chair. I see you're still angry. Understandable. But I hope that with time you'll be able to see things more rationally. I will never see anything your way, Sera said, her voice coming out rough. Daemon will come, and when he does, he'll destroy you. Ah, yes. Daemon. Gareth leaned back, crossing his legs. Let's talk about him then. Do you truly think he can defeat me? Even with the curse? I know he can. Gareth hesitated, and Sera saw it. I see you know about it. Good. Then you also know that in a prolonged trial, Daemon will inevitably lose control. His transformation will turn against him. And when that happens, well, it will be easy to finish what the curse started. He's stronger than you think. Perhaps, Gareth admitted. But strength isn't everything. There's also intelligence, strategy, preparation. He leaned forward. And I have all 3. I've studied Daemon for years, Sera. I know exactly how he fights. I know his weaknesses. I know when the curse affects his control. He stood, moved closer to the window, and looked out at the mountains with a thoughtful expression. You know, I am not a cruel man without reason, he said at last. Everything I do because I believe I am more fit to rule than Daemon. He is weak, controlled by a curse, obsessive. He left his keep for you, abandoned his duties. That isn't strength. It's weakness. That is love, Sera replied. Gareth turned to look at her, surprised. Love? You truly believe that? I know it. Gareth studied her for a long moment, then let out a low laugh. Interesting. Very interesting. He walked until he stood right in front of her. Then tell me, Sera, are you sure you aren't confusing love with necessity? Daemon was dying. 1 year left until the curse destroys him completely. Desperate, vulnerable. And then you appear, the perfect solution. His ice-blue eyes narrowed. How do you know what he feels for you is true love and not just gratitude from a man clinging to the only lifeline available? The words struck something deep, but Sera lifted her chin. You're manipulating the situation while he's fighting to survive. Daemon is trying to break a curse. You're only consumed by the desire for power. Perhaps, Gareth said. But at least I'm honest about what I want. Can you say the same about him? You know nothing about us. I know more than you think, Gareth said, stepping closer still until Sera had to tilt her head back to keep looking into those ice-blue eyes. I know Daemon is desperate. I know he'll do anything to get you back. And I know you deserve something better than a man broken by dark magic. If you're trying to convince me to choose you, you're wasting your time. Gareth smiled. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. Not yet. Just planting seeds. He stepped away, heading for the door. Think, Sera. And when the trial comes, you'll have to decide. Stay with a man who loves you out of need, or consider other options. Before Sera could respond, Gareth opened the door and left. Alone, Sera sat on the narrow bed and finally allowed herself to process everything. He is right about one thing, she admitted reluctantly. Daemon needs me. Without my healer's magic, without my presence to calm the transformation, the curse will kill him on his next new moon. But that isn't all there is between us, she insisted to herself. It can't be. The way he looks at me, the way he touches me, the way he crossed half the territories to find me. But doubt, once planted, was hard to uproot. The next morning, Gareth returned. This time he brought a more elaborate breakfast, fresh bread, fruit, even a bit of honey. I thought you might be tired of basic fare, he said, setting the tray on the table. Sera looked at the food but didn't touch it. What do you want, Gareth? To talk, he said, sitting down. To understand. I have nothing to say to you. Then listen, Gareth said, leaning forward. Let me tell you about a young noble who grew up being taught that strength was everything. That ruling was about power, about control. That weakness, any weakness, was intolerable. Sera didn't answer, but he continued. That young noble watched Daemon Ashencroft over the years. He saw a powerful prince, feared, respected. But he also saw the cracks, the curse that made him vulnerable every new moon, the isolation that consumed him, the obsession with finding a salvation that might not even exist. And you thought you could exploit that. I thought I could offer a better alternative, Gareth corrected. A ruler without a curse, without weakness, able to lead without being torn apart from within every month. A ruler without a heart, Sera replied. Without empathy, without love. Gareth went quiet for a moment. Love is weakness, he said at last. It makes you vulnerable, manipulable. Look at what Daemon is doing, risking everything, his keep, his position, his life, for one woman. That isn't weakness. That is strength, Sera said. The strength to prioritize what matters. And what matters? Gareth asked. One person, or the thousands who depend on a strong ruler. Both can coexist. Can they? Gareth stood. We'll find out. When Daemon arrives for the trial, we'll see if your love is enough to win, or if in the end it's just another weakness to be exploited. And then he left again. On the third morning, Gareth entered with a different expression, more serious, more determined. Today is the day, he said. The trial happens at sunset. And before we go, I need you to understand something. Sera didn't answer. She just waited. If I win, when I win, you will become my consort. Not by choice, but by right of conquest. Everything that was Daemon's becomes mine, including you. I'm not property. In the world of cursed nobility, that is exactly what a consort is, Gareth replied coldly. Property, symbol, power. And you will be mine. Sera felt fear tighten in her throat, but she forced herself to lift her chin. Then you'll have to kill me too, because alive, I will never be yours. Something flickered in Gareth's ice-blue eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or respect. You have more strength than you appear to have, he said at last. It's a shame it's wasted on a man who doesn't deserve it. He turned toward the door. Get ready. We leave in 1 hour. And as the door closed behind him, Sera allowed herself one last silent prayer. Please, Daemon. Please survive. Please. The arena had been prepared on neutral ground, a vast plain surrounded by rocky hills where neither Daemon's territory nor Gareth's could claim advantage. When Sera arrived, escorted by Gareth's guards, her heart nearly stopped. There were hundreds of people there, hundreds on both sides, forming an enormous circle around a space marked off by ancient stones carved with runes she couldn't read. They were warriors, nobles, representatives of smaller houses, all come to witness what could shift the balance of power across the entire region. And at the center of the arena, waiting, stood Daemon. He wore only dark leather trousers, his bare torso revealing the landscape of scars. His black hair was pulled back and tied at the nape of his neck. And when his storm-gray eyes found Sera's through the crowd, the whole world seemed to stop. Sera saw the pain there, the desperation, the restrained fury, but also something deeper, absolute determination. She tried to run to him, but the guards held her tightly, leading her to an elevated area where she would be forced to watch. Gareth was already there, seated on a kind of improvised throne, completely relaxed as if this were May entertainment. Make yourself comfortable, he said as Sera was positioned beside him. This should be an interesting spectacle. Sera didn't answer. She only kept her eyes fixed on Daemon, trying to send him through her gaze everything she couldn't say out loud. I believe in you. Please survive. On the far side of the arena, a lieutenant stood beside Daemon, his voice low but urgent. Your Highness, there's still time to refuse. We could raise an army, storm his fortress, rescue her by force. No, Daemon cut him off, his grey eyes never leaving Sera. This ends here, today, the right way. But the curse. I know, Daemon said, finally looking at his lieutenant. And there was acceptance in his eyes. I know if the fight goes on too long, I'll lose control. I know Gareth is counting on that. But I also know I have no choice. She is my fated one, and I will not abandon her. He planned this for months, Your Highness, the lieutenant said urgently. Our informants confirmed it. Gareth has studied your every move, every fighting pattern, every moment the curse affects your control. He knows exactly what to do. Then I'll have to be unpredictable, Daemon replied. The lieutenant was silent for a moment, then placed a hand on Daemon's shoulder. Then fight like you've never fought before. I won't die, Daemon said. And there was so much conviction in those words that the lieutenant almost believed him. And I will prove, Daemon thought, looking at Sera one more time, that she isn't my weakness. She is my strength. An elder with white hair stepped into the arena, carrying a staff carved with ancient symbols. His voice echoed across the plain, carried by magic that made everyone present fall silent. Nobles of North and East, today you face each other in an ancestral trial, he declared. The rules are simple. Fight until one submits or dies. There is no dishonorable surrender. There is no outside interference. What happens within this sacred circle is witnessed by the old gods and accepted by all. He looked at Daemon. Daemon Ashencroft, Prince-Regent. Do you accept the terms? I accept. Daemon's voice rang out, steady. The elder turned to Gareth. Gareth Ironwood, Lord of the Eastern Marches. Do you accept the terms? Gareth rose, stepping down from the elevated area with measured strides. I accept. He entered the arena, and for the first time, Sera saw the two men side by side. Both were immense, powerful, built for war. But there was a difference. Daemon moved with natural grace, like a confident predator, black hair catching the last light of the setting sun. Gareth moved with calculated precision, like a strategist who left nothing to chance, his copper-red hair stark against his ice-blue eyes. The elder lifted his staff. May the old gods judge who is worthy, he said. Begin. Daemon attacked first. He launched himself across the distance between them with speed that was almost impossible to track, partially shifting in the process, talons bursting out, his eyes flaring violet. The first strike went for Gareth's throat, meant to end the fight quickly. But Gareth was experienced. He dodged at the last instant, Daemon's talons only grazing his shoulder, and countered with a brutal punch that slammed into Daemon's ribs with enough force to crack bone. Daemon snarled in pain but didn't retreat. Instead, he spun and drove a kick into Gareth's side, sending him stumbling. The crowd roared. The two nobles circled each other, eyes locked, bodies tense, waiting for the next opening. Then Gareth shifted fully. His body erupted into copper-red fur, bones rearranging, and in seconds where a man had stood, there was now a massive beast, nearly as large as Daemon's form, with a coat that gleamed like fire beneath the setting sun and ice-blue eyes that burned with cruel intelligence. Daemon didn't hesitate. He shifted fully too. And when his form emerged, black as midnight, larger, more powerful, with storm-grey eyes that blazed with violet light, the entire arena felt the weight of his power. He was the Prince-Regent, and he was furious. The two beasts crashed together with a force that made the earth tremble. Talons tore flesh. Fangs sank into throats. Blood stained the ground as they fought in a deadly dance as old as their very bloodlines. Sera watched with her heart in her throat, unable to look away, her hands clenched so tightly her nails bit into her palms. Please, please, please. The fight was brutal, violent. Daemon was stronger, faster, but Gareth was cunning. Every time Daemon tried to finish it, Gareth slipped away, dodged, and struck back at weak points he knew to target. And as the minutes dragged on, as blood kept spilling, Sera saw something begin to change. Daemon was slowing. Not much, but enough to be noticed. His shifts began to falter, not fully beast, not fully man, but something in between. And the pain showed in every movement. No, not now. Not when he's so close. Gareth noticed too. She saw the satisfaction flare in his ice-blue eyes as he began to press harder, attacking without pause, forcing Daemon to defend again and again. It's exactly what he planned, Sera realized. Drag it out. Wear Daemon down. Wait for the curse to surface. And then it happened. Daemon roared, a sound half human, half beast, filled with pure agony. And his shift failed completely. He got stuck between forms, his body twisting, talons bursting out and retracting, bones cracking in wrong directions. The curse was taking over. Gareth seized the moment instantly. He lunged, slamming Daemon down, his fangs clamping around Daemon's throat, pressing, choking. The crowd fell silent. Everyone knew what it meant. The trial was ending. Sera surged to her feet, the chains that held her to the chair stretching to their limit, and screamed with everything she had. Daemon! The shout split the silence like thunder, and something impossible happened. Daemon stopped fighting the shift. Instead, he closed his eyes, even with Gareth's fangs still pressing into his throat, and focused. Not on the wild transformation trying to rip him apart from the inside. Not on the pain of the curse, but on her voice. Sera. He remembered her touch that first night. The way she had calmed the transformation with a single gesture. And then, for the first time in 10 years, Daemon didn't fight what was inside him. He accepted it as part of himself. The transformation that had once torn his body apart now flowed smoothly, naturally, the way it was meant to. Beast and man fused completely, not at war, but in harmony. And when Daemon opened his eyes again, they burned with a power no noble they had ever seen. He roared, a sound that made the ground shake, that made every person present instinctively bow, and hurled Gareth away with brutal force. Gareth hit the ground several yards away, stunned, and when he tried to rise, Daemon was already on him. What happened next was devastating. Daemon attacked with a ferocity that bordered on savage, yet he kept absolute control. Every strike was precise. Every bite was calculated. Gareth tried to defend himself, tried to counter using everything he'd learned from years of studying Daemon. But he couldn't. In less than 5 minutes, Gareth was on the ground, bleeding from dozens of wounds, barely able to breathe. Daemon stood over him, jaws closing around Gareth's throat, pressing, not enough to kill, but enough to make it clear he could. And then he waited. The elder approached slowly, his staff thudding against the ground. "Lord Gareth Ironwood," he said, his voice carrying. "Do you submit?" Gareth stayed silent for a long moment, pride warring with survival. But when Daemon pressed a little harder, when the taste of blood filled Gareth's mouth, he finally yielded. He bared his throat completely, the universal gesture of submission among cursed nobility, and whispered the word that sealed his fate. "I submit." The arena erupted in roars. Daemon released Gareth's throat and backed away, shifting slowly back into human form. He was covered in blood, his own and Gareth's, but he remained standing, victorious. His black hair, smeared with dirt and blood, gleamed beneath the setting sun. The elder lifted his staff. "Daemon Ashencroft is declared the victor," he proclaimed. "By right of conquest, all of Gareth Ironwood's territories, powers, and possessions now belong to the Prince-Regent." But Daemon didn't care about territories. He didn't care about power. He turned, his grey eyes sweeping the crowd until they found what he was searching for. Sera. She was still in the elevated area, shaking, crying, but alive. Alive and his. Daemon crossed the arena in long strides, ignoring the pain of his injuries, ignoring the crowd's cheers. When he reached her, he simply pulled her into his arms and held her as if he would never let her go again. "You won," Sera sobbed against his chest. "You won. Nothing is going to separate us again," Daemon murmured into her hair. "Absolutely nothing." He pulled back slightly, cradling her face in his hands. And there were so many emotions in his grey eyes that Sera could barely process them all. "I love you," he said, each word clear, absolute. "Not out of need. Not because you break the curse. But because you're the only person who makes me feel whole, the only one who sees me not as a prince, but as a man. And if I have to spend the rest of my life proving that, I will." And then she kissed him. Right there, in front of hundreds of witnesses, surrounded by blood and victory. Sera kissed Daemon with everything she had. And when they finally pulled apart, the crowd's roar of approval made the earth tremble. The bonding ceremony took place that same night, on neutral ground beneath a star-filled sky, with hundreds forming a sacred circle. The elder led the rite, the words in an ancient tongue echoing through the night. "Daemon Ashencroft, Prince-Regent of the Northern Territories and now the East," his voice reverberated. "Do you claim this woman as your consort?" "I claim her," Daemon answered, holding Sera's hand. "And you, Sera?" The elder paused, his eyes studying her as if he could see through her, reading something others could not. When he spoke again, there was reverence in his voice. "Healer of ancient magic, tamer of curses. Do you accept this man as your bond, your fated one?" Sera looked at Daemon, to the man who had crossed half the territories to find her, who had fought curse and enemies to protect her, who looked at her now with those grey eyes as if she were the only thing that mattered. "I accept," she said, her voice steady. The elder smiled, the first genuine smile he had shown. "Then let it be sealed beneath the full moon, witnessed by the old gods." Daemon pulled Sera to him, leaning in until his lips brushed her neck, exactly where her pulse beat hard. And then, before everyone, he bit. It wasn't brutal. It was reverent, the bonding mark, the final seal of the fated bond between them. Sera gasped at the sensation, sharp pain followed by heat that spread through her entire body like liquid fire. She felt something shift at a deep level, felt the bond between them solidify in a way that could never be broken. When Daemon pulled back, there was blood on his lips, and the mark on her neck glowed under the moonlight, permanent, visible, declaring to the whole world that she belonged to him as much as he belonged to her. The crowd roared again, but Sera only had eyes for Daemon. "Now you are my consort," he said, touching the mark with reverence. "Now you are truly mine." "I always was," Sera replied. And when they kissed again, sealing the bond in every way that mattered, the full moon above seemed to shine a little brighter. 3 months later, Sera stood in the gardens of Thornhaven Keep, watching Daemon train with the guards in the courtyard below. So much had changed since the trial. Gareth had been stripped of his titles, his lands absorbed into Daemon's territories, his followers given the choice to submit or leave. Most chose submission, acknowledging that Daemon was the stronger ruler. Master Thorn remained as steward, but his relationship with Sera was forever changed, respectful, cautious, as he worked to earn back the trust he'd lost. And the curse was broken. Not completely, not instantly. But in the last new moon, when there should have been pain, there was nothing. Only peace. And Sera had uncovered something else about the curse. As she studied her lineage, she found old records about Mora Blackthorn. The sorceress hadn't been only vengeful. She had been prophetic. She knew the only way to break the curse was through a healer of ancient magic. And she knew, too, that in that time, healers were hunted, persecuted, killed. Mora had cast the curse knowing that to save their prince, the realm would be forced to value the very people it persecuted. You kill healers and magic users out of fear of what you don't understand. But the day will come when the prince himself will depend on them to survive. And then you will have to choose, pride or salvation. Moira had gotten her revenge, but she had also left a legacy of change. Healers who once hid were now called openly to the keep. Magic users offered their services without fear. Ancient knowledge once suppressed returned to the light. And it was exactly that knowledge that allowed Sera to discover who she truly was. Over the past 3 months, Sera had thrown herself into studying her gift. She learned it wasn't only healer's magic, it was an old, powerful lineage. Lysandra Moon Whisper, her mother, had been one of the most powerful healers of her generation. And she also learned why she had been abandoned. Lysandra hadn't left her at the sanctuary out of lack of love. She had been hunted. When Sera was born, Lysandra knew her daughter carried the same gift, perhaps even stronger. So she did the only thing a mother could do. She hid her. She brought the infant to Holomay's sanctuary on a stormy night, left only a silver crescent pendant engraved with the name Seraphina Moon Whisper, and vanished far away, drawing the hunters in another direction. To protect her daughter, Lysandra sacrificed the chance to ever know her. The record said she was never found. Some believed she had died. Others believed she had fled to distant lands. But Sera chose to believe that wherever she was, Lysandra had done it out of love. The same kind of love Sera understood now, the kind that makes you sacrifice everything for the person who matters most. And Sera was learning to honor that legacy. My consort. Daemon's voice rang out from the courtyard, and Sera turned to see him waving, sweaty from training, but smiling in a way that was only for her. His black hair shone under the afternoon sun. Come, I need you to demonstrate something. Sera laughed, shaking her head, but she went down the steps toward him. And when Daemon pulled her into his arms, not caring that he was sweaty, not caring that guards were watching, and kissed her like he'd been waiting an eternity for it, Sera knew she was home. Not in the keep, not in the territories, but in his arms. End of story.